Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We are here today with three peer supporters from Interwoven Connections, as well as myself from Parents for Children's Mental Health, to talk today about a really complex topic that is impacting many families across Ontario, AFCCA. And that stands for Aggression Towards Family and Caregivers in Childhood and Adolescence. And it's called that because there are patterns of behavior happening in your home that are aggressive, whether physically, verbally, or emotionally, that are impacting you as a caregiver or other folks in the home. So we're going to dig into this today, and we're really going to talk about what to do, how to know if it's happening, and where to go for help. So I'd love to introduce to you the peer connectors, actually, from Interwoven Connections. Melissa Farrow is with us today, and she's the proud mother of many children through birth, adoption, and foster care. With 3 biological children and 4 through public adoption, she continues to also provide foster care services as she has for the past 15 years. Through her variety of parenting experiences, she's become really knowledgeable about FASD, ADHD, ASD, PTSD, AFCCA, anxiety, depression, developmental trauma, and developmental delays, as well as sibling adoption and openness. And with a BA in social developmental studies, she believes in empowering individuals through education and community, like webinars like today, and is passionate about helping families and finding hope and support. Next, I'll introduce Sarah West, who's an adoptive mother of 6, each with their own unique strengths and challenges, and her parenting journey has given her deep experience with fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, ADHD, Tourette syndrome, learning differences, and trauma-informed attachment-focused care. She's working closely with local organizations, supporting children and families with diverse needs, and is a strong advocate for openness in adoption. Sarah knows that raising a family built through adoption can both be deeply rewarding and incredibly tough. And when her family has faced challenges themselves that they couldn't navigate alone, Interwoven Connections and the AFCCA program became a vital source of support. So now, as a peer connector with Interwoven, Sarah's honored to share what she's learned, and she's passionate about helping families build strong, healthy relationships and ensuring that no one has to face this journey alone. And lastly, Jennifer Pengelly. Jennifer serves as a peer connector in the East region at Interwoven Connections and walks alongside families on their permanency journeys. She and her husband have adopted 5 incredible children through the public system, navigating together the joys and complexities of building a vibrant, blended family with lived experiences in ADHD, FASD, interracial adoption, sibling group adoption, and parenting a large household. Jennifer's become a confident and compassionate resource for others, and she deeply believes in the strength of shared stories and the power of connection to support and uplift permanency families walking similar paths. And I'm joining you today also as a parent with lived experience with AFCCA. My son is biologically my son and has complex needs, including mental health and developmental disability, as well as neurodevelopmental differences. And so all 3 of those together created an AFCCA scenario in my own home as well. And I'm a child and youth worker. I have worked with families for over 25 years, supporting them in their homes and helping them navigate services. I'm also a peer supporter with Parents for Children's Mental Health through CMHO, and I'm here today to also share my perspective during this conversation. Thanks for joining me today, ladies. This is going to be a really great conversation, and hopefully we'll be able to reach lots of families with our experiences. So I think a good place to start our conversation is to discuss what kind of constitutes normal aggression versus aggression that needs intervention and outside support. We had a lot of families who registered for this webinar that were asking about 2 specific themes that they want to better understand. They want to know, what age can aggressive behavior begin? So I'm going to turn to you, Melissa, to start us off with this one. What age should folks be paying attention to this?
I think it's difficult to pinpoint an exact age that aggression can be considered problematic. We know that children and young toddlers, especially, often turn to aggression because they lack some of those communication skills and self regulation skills that we develop as we age. So it's
Mhm.
quite common to see that behavior in toddlers, and it's often very easy to manage because they're much smaller than us. And so the behavior doesn't feel as overwhelming or as extreme as when it's happening with older children. But as kids age, we would expect to see them develop some of those skills with communication, with self regulation that would help them to manage their emotions in ways that are not needing to be expressed aggressively.
Mhm.
But I will say, as part of the AFCCA team, we're seeing families come forward with young children. Often, kids enter the school system and behaviors may be unmanageable in a classroom setting. And that's when families really kind of get the idea that maybe they need some extra support.
Yeah, that makes sense because typically with little ones, you kind of anticipate a little bit of that because they can't really regulate themselves. Jen, what about yourself? Do you have anything to add to that?
Well, I think I agree with Melissa. Often it's brought to the forefront when our kids become bigger, stronger, and louder. And that's typically when we notice it.
Yeah, that's a great description. That really brings it to life for us there. And Sarah, I know that you had a great sort of summary of this too, like what age and what should folks be paying attention to when we talk about identifying whether it's just typical developmental stage or is it more than that?
I would say if the aggression becomes something that happens consistently, if you notice a pattern, if it's unprovoked, unpredictable, specifically targeted to certain members of the family, and it's the sort of aggression that doesn't lessen with age and stage and developmental stage and doesn't lessen with consequences and may cause emotional, physical, or mental distress within the family.
Yeah, I think that's a really important distinction to pay attention to is the impact on the family as well as the young person themselves, right? And thank you for setting us up to understand that this can happen at any age. And also, you're looking for those patterns. And as a parent, you're trying what you know in your kind of traditional parenting sense, and it doesn't seem to be working. So I think that's really important to point out. Along the same theme, families are wondering how they could identify what level of aggression between siblings is considered normal. And I think this is a really important point because siblings also experience this, right? And if they aren't a young person who is aggressive themselves, this can have impact. So, Jen, I'd love to get you started on this question for us today.
So I would say if it's outside of the normal childhood squabbles, does my child stop when being asked to? Is it competitive and playful? If the child persists and shows a pattern of being aggressive with siblings, or even just targeting one sibling in particular, it's more aggressive. And it could be sometimes more emotionally upsetting, targeting maybe a deficit that another sibling has. Is it causing distress to others on a regular basis?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so really paying attention to, again, that impact on others, that makes a difference. Absolutely. Sarah, what about you? Do you have anything to add?
I just want to echo what Jen is saying about, I think every person and caregiver and child has a different sort of level of tolerance. And if you know your kids the best, so if you really feel that this is something that is causing distress, causing harm, causing even just ongoing discomfort for either of your kids, or just even the values of your home,
Mm-hmm.
then I think it's beyond, yeah, what is normal or what is okay for you. Whatever environment you want for your family is important. So if it goes beyond the safety or level of stress that you want to see in your home, then that's enough to ask for help.
I love that, and really trusting yourself as the parent or caregiver and what your hopes are in the home. I think that's really important to point out that you can be empowered to make those decisions and trust yourself if something feels wrong. Melissa, anything that you want to add to this question?
I like Jen's perspective about if the behavior stops when is asked to be stopped. So if this is something that caregivers are easily able to manage and redirect and teach skills that are improving that behavior over time between the kids, then I think it's probably within what we expect to see. Siblings do have some disagreements and arguments, and so that's not necessarily outside of the normal. But
Mm-hmm.
Red flags for me might be if one child is consistently the aggressor, if children in the home are afraid to be around a particular sibling because they're so consistently aggressive,
Mhm.
if injuries are happening as a result of the aggression, or if you're really seeing that pattern of behavior escalate over time.
Yeah, I appreciate that distinction. I can think back to a situation with my boys when we were at a pool, and my son, who was consistently aggressive, was holding his brother underwater. And I think something that happens in play in the pool is that people typically do push each other under, but they don't typically hold someone under, right? Like that's that level of difference in aggression. So I really appreciate you just calling parents out and inviting them to just pay attention to those levels. And is someone specifically the aggressor most often?
Vicky, I love that example. Just as you're saying that, I had the exact same thing happen
Mhm.
with my older son and my younger son. And I think it's just going back to that something in your gut knows this is not right. There's something beyond the typical that doesn't feel safe. So I like that.
Yeah, I was frightened, right? My trigger and cue was I felt frightened and was really concerned that my younger son was harmed. So yeah, paying attention to our own feelings that come up as things are happening. And on that note, what do you think parents and caregivers should do to manage the aggressive behavior while it's happening? They want to know how to keep everyone in the home safe. So Sarah, I'll get you to start us off on this one because I think we've got a lot of tips to share with folks.
So, Vicky, as you know, PCMH on your website has a great toolkit, like a list of outlines that list some practical tips for in the moment
Mhm.
reactions to aggression. Things like really minimizing the words that you use, really noticing how you yourself are reacting in the moment. So, staying calm, grounding yourself as much as possible, not using this as a time to teach or argue, but really lessen the impact or the growing of the intensity of the situation.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
and within the moment, really, I do believe a lot of the amount, I guess, of the aggression can be managed even by our own reactions. So, although we cannot control what another person is doing, we can absolutely control what we do. So, going outside, calling a friend, calling your mom and dad, grandma and grandpa to come in. This is where really enlisting your supporters comes in. That's really important. Knowing who to call, knowing where you can go
Yeah.
to ground yourself, to make yourself feel safe is really important.
I appreciate that. And I know we had folks reach out who are single parents and who don't have a co-parent in the home. And that was a concern is I don't have someone to pass it off to. So it really highlights the importance of needing to build your support network. And our toolkit talks about that. The resource has very distinct ways to build your support network, as well as a link to a video that really digs deeper into that. So that's super important, whether you're a parent or a co-parent or a single parent or blended family living in a home with grandparents or multi-generational families. Building your support network can look different for everyone's family, but is super important. On that note, though, speaking of creating a plan, Jen, do you have any thoughts about that?
Creating a plan for yourself and your loved ones to make sure that you're well supported, pulling in neighbors and friends and family when you can, and just be like, hey, you know what? You have to almost let go of some of your shame. You have to tell them
Yeah,
what's going on so that when you do reach out, if you're sending a text, hey, how are you? They answer you. I feel
yeah.
being able to have an outlet for yourself, again, having like a warm tea or a warm coffee to regulate yourself. You need to be able to come down because, again, I always find if you go at an aggressive child, well, you're heightened, you're both heightened, and you don't get anywhere. So the other thing I think is you have to realize that sometimes you do have to make a bit of a sacrifice. With my kids, I have 4 boys. My 3 middle boys are all only a year apart. We sometimes have rules where they're not allowed outside alone together because
Hmm.
someone could be hitting someone over the back with a golf club. So you
Yeah.
do have to be able to accommodate and have your eyes everywhere. So We always call it divide and conquer at our home. So again, splitting up kids that may have it may not be a good fit together.
I think that's a really important point. I think about my expectations as a parent. I thought I should be able to send my boys to the variety store together at the age of 10 and 12. And I tried to encourage that. And my younger son would say, I don't want to go with him. And I ignored that initially and pushed him to go with him. And it always ended in disaster. And so I had to recognize that I was actually not helping in that situation, but rather setting up a possible occurrence of AFCCA. And I had to stop doing that. Typical kids might be able to go to the variety store together. And I thought that's what I could expect of my kids. But I had to acknowledge my son had a challenge with that. And I couldn't let them be out in the community together alone. And so I think you point out a really good thing here around we have to change our expectations sometimes too, and then plan ahead for that, right? Melissa, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think I'll echo just some of what they said, but it never hurts to hear it twice.
Yeah.
And also want to acknowledge the managing of expectations, because I know that as a caregiver myself, I would come to webinars like this and hope that I was going to find the answer or the tip or technique that was really going to eradicate the incidents of aggression. And just knowing that there really isn't a magic wand. You're not doing anything wrong if you can't curb that aggression in the moment. There are things that you can do to help yourself and to maybe help manage the incident, but it's not really realistic to expect that you can just do one thing or say one thing that's going to really make a huge impact and end that aggressive episode. I do think it's helpful, as we talked about, to really slow down during an episode of aggression. Our kids' brains are just not working at their max capacity. So they're not going to respond to lots of words or lecturing, threats of consequences, or us trying to overpower them to try to get that behavior under control. Having that safety plan and activating that safety plan is really important in that time. And that could be separating the child who's being aggressive from the rest of the household, maybe moving to a space in your home that you know is a safer space when the child is acting out, calling that support person like Jen and Sarah both mentioned. If your child, you catch something at the beginning and they're still willing and able to, encourage them to take space. If you can have something set up ahead of time with them, that there's a quiet corner they can go to, or maybe there's a comfort object that helps them to regulate in those moments. We can try to de-escalate behavior sometimes by naming the emotion that the child's feeling, offering a distraction, maybe offering a drink or a sensory item to them, lowering our expectations in that moment. So not expecting them to be able to respond to us with a respectful tone or to complete whatever we may have asked of them that set off the episode in the first place. Speaking in a lower and slower voice can send signals of safety to our child. Just the way that we're built, the way that our nervous system responds, that lower, slower voice can sometimes help. And it's often helpful to stay close to the child to maintain some proximity without being so close that your own safety is in jeopardy or that the child's feeling threatened by your presence if you're too close or within their space. And again, if you get overwhelmed or angry, it's time to take a break. It's time to either switch out with another caregiver if you have that option, or take a walk, or do something so that you can come back and be regulated in that moment.
I really appreciate that perspective of just paying attention to yourself in the moment too, and focusing on how you're responding. I think that's super important. I had a thought just in terms of, we're talking a lot of maybe about younger kids here, but I would imagine that advice is the same for older youth as well. Like I remember when my son was bigger than myself and he was being violent, it was really the same strategies that stayed in place. But do you have anything to add on that, any of you, around youth?
I think sometimes when they get bigger, sometimes it does get to the point that you need to involve either taking the child to the hospital or calling in police to help. That can be part of the safety plan too, that you know that when things get to a certain level, that it's beyond what's able to be managed within your own four walls, and that you need to seek help in that moment outside of your house.
I think that can be really scary for some families, but I think is one of the only alternatives when safety is a risk, right? And so keeping safety at the forefront in the home is a really important piece there. Sarah, did you have something to add?
I was just thinking as Melissa was talking about distraction and you were mentioning older kids. I do remember a time where my teenage daughter was becoming quite aggressive, and I just in the moment switched it up and was like, wow, you seem like you really are stressed out. Can I draw you a bath and get you a tea? And it was so shocking to her because, like, please know
Yeah,
that was like one in a million for me. Like, I did that one time. The other times I did not react well. But
right.
and for some reason, it just kind of flipped her out because it was so unexpected. So she just started crying and she let me soothe her, whereas other times that's not going to be possible. So I think even just that example
Yeah,
and put in with Melissa's example of when you need to call in other people. That's why a safety plan is really important, because these strategies aren't going to work every time on your kiddo, or you're not going to be in a place every time to do them. So there's just so many factors that a plan really helps.
absolutely. And what that reminds me of too is just the point that you're talking about around having to slow things down and validation, and how validating what they must be feeling in that moment, how actually powerful that can be in pausing them a little bit, but in very few words, right? Like that example was perfect. And I think a lot of parents listening right now might be thinking, but am I not just giving them permission to treat me this way? And I think what's really important is that by validating your child's emotions or your young person's emotions in the moment and trying to de-escalate the situation, you're not giving them the signal that this behavior is okay. You're actually just trying to keep everyone safe, and that becomes the focus. So I think it is really important to remember that you're not giving away any parenting control, but you are keeping your home safe, which becomes the priority when AFCCA is happening, right? So I think that's really important to just highlight, because I know a lot of parents are like, but if I'm giving her a tea and offering her to draw a bath, am I not just encouraging this poor behavior? And I really want the message to be clear that no, in that moment, actually, you're not, because they're actually not capable of thinking outside of that in this moment. So we have to really highlight that. So thank you for that example, Sarah. I think we've covered a lot about what kinds of behaviors would indicate that it's time to get some help. But do any of you have an example that you think you could share briefly that might help folks know when to get help? And I think, Melissa, I'll turn to you to start us off.
I think it's really okay whenever a caregiver is feeling like they need help. I don't think it's as much about a specific behavior that's happening as much as our own kind of capacity and ability to manage. And sometimes we think about the family life as like a balance. And on one side, we have the supports and capacity, and on the other side, we have needs and stress. And when that balance is no longer even, if the stressors start to take over and family life might start to feel out of control or overwhelming. People talk about feeling like they're walking on eggshells around their kids so that they don't trigger any kind of episode. For me, I know when I was waking up in the morning with a feeling of dread in the pit of my stomach because I didn't know what I was going to face that day, or was watching the clock tick toward the time that I had to pick my kids up from school, and
Mm-hmm.
that was just filling me with anxiety and a tightening in my stomach, then I knew that my scale was out of balance and I needed to add in supports. And ideally, that behavior, that help can be sought before the family's in a crisis, right? Because it's always
Yeah.
easier to intervene and put supports in place when there's not a current crisis happening or behavior isn't so severely entrenched that it's really difficult to walk it back and find other ways of managing it. I think if you feel as a caregiver like you need help, then absolutely reach out, and the earlier the better.
So again, empowering us as parents and caregivers to trust our guts and take action. I appreciate that. Thanks, Melissa. And Jen, what would you recommend if your child or young person refuses to talk to you about the issue? Can you suggest some specific things to try?
Yeah, so when a child resists talking about the aggression, I feel it can help to gently step back and revisit the conversation when everyone's feeling more regulated. Going
Mm-hmm.
in when we're heightened doesn't work for anyone. I think approaching them with a calm, non-judgmental energy creates space for co-regulation when you're ready to do so. It also shows them a little bit more trust. They trust when you're coming to them from a caring space instead of from an angry space. The connecting one-to-one in a safe and familiar setting. So you don't want to approach this in the middle of a shopping mall or the middle of the grocery store. It can wait. It can wait till you get home, as long as everyone's not in crisis at the moment. And I think perhaps giving them a little bit of a buy-in, like, oh, I have your favorite candy here or some ice cream. Can we sit down and talk about this? The small gestures really do send a powerful message, I feel. And you're there to understand how they're feeling. You're not there to punish them, because like you said before, they often don't know that they're doing these things. They become so heightened that it's just a fight or flight response. And they're trying to push you away a lot of the times. They don't want to connect at that point.
Exactly.
So co-regulating and coming at it from a space of calm and again, the connection.
I appreciate that distinction about co-regulation and the fact that we have to recognize that it's okay to take some time to address something difficult. I think many of us were probably raised where that wasn't a thing. It got addressed on the spot and it led to blowups and so on. And traditional parenting would say, address it now, right? Or give a consequence. And this is an entirely different way of thinking about parenting. It's connection before correction, right? And you're supporting your child or youth to learn how to regulate themselves and learn these skills. And I want to mention here that we have Dr. Manel doing a webinar with us in January about co-regulation. So if anyone listening today is interested in that, take a look on our website to register for that once it's up. And that will be really helpful to better understand, what does that actually mean and look like? So I think that's an important thing to remember here. Sarah, let's talk about prevention now, because as a family, maybe now you're hearing what we're saying today and you're like, wow, this is actually exactly what's happening in my home. And we know it's happening, or you've had an incident where your child or young person has been aggressive and it's happened a few times. We know it causes harm to everyone in the family, including the child or youth themselves. But what can caregivers and parents do to prevent aggression in their home?
I would say, again, the biggest thing that we can do is to make sure that we're okay as caregivers. So that we need to really be honest with ourselves as to where we're at in our capacity, in our feelings within our home, our feelings toward our child. We need support. So reaching out to PCMH, to Interwoven Connections, to other parents going through similar things, to friends and family. A lot of times when we go through AFCCA, we don't know how to talk about it. There's a lot of shame. There's a lot of misunderstanding. And we just keep it inside and it becomes really isolating. And that is just the worst thing to do, because we can't heal and feel supported if we're alone. So that's what I would say to start, is just get help, tell people, find your people that are going to believe you and trust you, come alongside, so that you can be in a stronger space when AFCCA occurs. And in prevention within the home, I mean, there are definitely some tips, again, on PCMH's website in their toolkit. One that we have at Interwoven is called the basket exercise, which we can put a link to, Vicky, for people who want to know more about that, but basically is just streamlining your expectations. We're outside of typical parenting at this point. You really need to come up with our big, important issues. So the values of our family, the values of our home, safety is huge, right? Kindness, things like that. So what are the big basket issues that we want to address? And what are the issues that, like eating right is important, dressing correctly is important, but are these things really the big issues right now? So just reevaluating, getting on the same page as the rest of our family, as our partners, if we have them. And then from there, just being able to collaborate as a family with supporters around. And my heart for anyone going through AFCCA, because what I needed to hear at the time was that you can do everything right. You can do all of these things, read all the books. And I think Melissa has spoke to this before. And AFCCA can still occur. Aggression can still occur. This is outside of our ability to fix or heal. This is beyond us. So we can do what we can do. And I think that's why I push for people just to learn what they need to be supported so that they can keep showing up every day.
Yeah. I think that for me, I also was single parenting, and that was crucial, was identifying I'm a child and youth worker with a full toolbox, and the shame I felt that I couldn't manage this in my own home, even though I was helping other families outside of my home as a professional, was really jarring for me. And I was lucky in that I did have a solid support network. So that is really important, is building the supports around you and talking about it openly to the people that you know you can trust and that will understand it. And so I echo what you're sharing, Sarah, and really appreciate that perspective. You mentioned taking time to yourself, and I know that we like to use the term restorative time. We also talk a bit about relationship repair. Melissa, I'd love to ask you to speak to those concepts, what they are, and maybe a little bit about what that looks like in real life for us.
I think repairing that relationship is both really important and really hard. We're not really made to be in relationships with people that act aggressively towards us, that maybe don't reciprocate our love and affection in the way that we would hope or expect. So I think acknowledging that it is really important as the parent to do that, but it is also really hard. And so when you're coming up against those feelings of maybe not wanting to do it, that's normal. That doesn't make you a bad parent. That's just part of the experience of being in a relationship that's outside of the norm. So it's important that we can take time to regulate ourselves and show some self-compassion to
Mhm.
understanding our own reaction to those experiences. And then when we are ready to do that with our child to make those repairs, we can lead with grace and model some of that relationship repair by maybe apologizing for anything that happened that we need to apologize for. Maybe we raised our voice, maybe we said something that we regret saying. It's okay to go to the child and to genuinely apologize for what happened. I think it's important to reassure them that we still love them, that our love is always going to be there, regardless of the circumstances around what may be happening with behavior. And we have something that we talk about at Interwoven Connections called relational gestures that you can offer your children. They're just small, unprovoked acts of kindness that can help to build that connection back up. And it can be really simple, like making your teenager's coffee in the morning for them or leaving a note on your child's pillow. It doesn't have to be anything elaborate, but we don't expect anything in return. This is just us putting out into the relationship the connection that we want them to feel from us. And if we have a minute, I just want to mention in the terms of repairing things after an incident of aggression that we also
Mhm.
can consider siblings because siblings in the home are affected as well. And so the
Yeah.
importance of just checking in with the other kids in the home to make sure that they're okay. Maybe they can contribute to the safety plan, what helps them to feel safe when that's going on. That's another place we can call in supporters. So there may be a neighbor who has an open door that a child can go to if things in the home are getting escalated and they don't feel comfortable. Maybe there's a grandparent or an uncle who can be available to the children by phone or by text so that they have that safe person to co-regulate with while you're busy
Mhm.
dealing with the aggressive incident.
That's a really important point. And I know that it feels like a lot as a parent and caregiver to have to think of all of the sides of it, but we really are forced to do that to help support everybody in the home, including ourselves. So that's the importance of restorative time, right? Highlighting what you need, taking care of yourself so that you can take care of the other kids too, and making sure your energy is spread out and refilled when needed. I know my younger son at a very young age knew that when he got to go into mommy's room behind the closed door and watch his favorite Netflix show, that was the moment, that was the plan to keep him safe because his brother needed the support in the moment. So it just became our safety plan. So, and I think I want to highlight here too that we have a resource on our website specifically about the sibling experience and how to support siblings and talk to them about things that are happening in the home that feel like that they go against our values and what we would like them to know. So thank you for all of those points, Melissa. Jen, do you have anything to add in terms of relationship repair and restorative time?
So I think it's important to talk about the situation while everyone is regulated. So again, I've talked about this before. Going in while the child is still heightened or you're still heightened doesn't get you anywhere. You're talking in circles.
Mm-hmm.
Choosing to let go of the expectations of what you think the outcome should be. There is no expectations. It's just that this happened. And maybe for me, my child has problem expressing what that emotion was. Like I always said when he was a toddler, he was happy or he's mad. There was no, I'm just content and I'm here right now. So,
Right.
you know, when he was younger, I always tried to help him label what are you feeling? What does your tummy feel? What does your heart feel? What are you feeling? So helping them to maybe express how they're feeling and trying to label it if you can. And I think
Yeah.
being honest and labeling how you felt at that moment. Yes, you made me feel scared. And I feel sad that you said those things about me. I think in those moments, connection is key. And it's
Yeah.
about that connection. And I understand that you're feeling this way. I am sad that you're feeling this way. It doesn't come from a place of anger at that point. So I think it's, can I give you a hug? And again, asking permission, because I've had times where my kids are like, nope, don't touch me. And again, making the coffee or something has more of a positive effect on them than the physical touch. So it could be, oh, here, I got out your favorite set of Lego. Would you like to play with this? So again, it's that connection
Yeah.
when you both walk away feeling more regulated.
Inviting us to focus on connection, because what that builds is for those moments of difficulty, that trust and that connection, to be able to get through it together as a family and to be able to go back to that connection, right? So again, calling into question the traditional parenting of, as the parent, you're in control and you have the power and you don't want to show vulnerability. But this is actually inviting us to do the exact opposite, is be vulnerable, build trust, show that you have feelings too, validate their feelings. And I think that's a really great way to shift your parenting perspective a little bit. We're inviting folks to do a lot of thinking on these things in this webinar, and I love it. I'd love to wrap us up today talking about where families can turn for help. Jen, do you want to talk about Interwoven Connections and get us started on what families can expect from Interwoven Connections?
Sure. So at Interwoven, we are a service that is offered to adoption, kinship, and customary care families. So if you fit under that umbrella, we invite you to register on our website and you will have a peer connector assigned to you in the area. When we have the connection meeting, we'll just take down the information and we'll ask you about certain things. We will ask you if there is AFCCA in your home. And at that point, we can tell you about our AFCCA program. In that program, there's many great resources such as NVR trainings and vagal trainings that will be offered through our peer connectors on our AFCCA team. So you can sign up simply by going to our website and we can get you started.
Great. Thank you. Melissa, what about other AFCCA resources?
We do have a lot of AFCCA resources available on our website that are available just to the general public. So if you're not someone who falls under that umbrella of being a permanency family, then there are still resources available for you on the Interwoven Connections website. We have a fairly extensive YouTube channel with lots of webinars and lots of videos with information sharing about the caregiver's perspective, the child's perspective. We have clinicians that speak to different strategies and ways of managing and understanding what's going on in your home. We have printables and tip sheets on the website. We have a blog that you can read. There's also a case study from a caregiver's perspective to walk through what it looks like to have AFCCA in the home. And if you are a permanency family who joins with us, then we also have specific AFCCA support groups and Facebook groups that you can become a part of.
Amazing. And I know that through our resource on the Virtual Family Care Center, the AFCCA Toolkit links folks directly to some of those resources. So that's a good place to start to then find all the rest as well. And the videos are linked throughout the document as well. So lots of great resources through Interwoven Connections. Sarah, can you speak more about the Interwoven Connections peer support?
Absolutely. So when a caregiver registers on our website, your first point of contact will be one of us or another peer connector in your area. And we have peer connectors across the province that will reach out to you and connect, like Jen said, have that initial conversation. And what peer connectors can offer are just a one-on-one support that never expires. So you can always reach out to us no matter what. If you have questions or you've forgotten something or you're wondering if we do something, please just reach out to us. And even if we do hook you up with our AFCCA clinicians and you start some sort of training, or a one-on-one support with them, you still have access to us as your peer connector throughout that whole
Amazing.
journey as well. Yeah.
Amazing. And we'll link those as well for families so they can connect. I appreciate that. And I think it's important to understand the difference. So again, if your family is formed under kinship, adoption, or customary care, Interwoven offers clinical supports and the Peers Connector program for you. But also, as they've mentioned, everything is available to anyone on YouTube video. So definitely check it out. There are some amazing resources there. For families where that doesn't quite fit, so I know for myself, my son is my biological son, and so I reached out in a different way. Children's Mental Health Ontario has a number of community child and youth mental health service providers who you can access for free as well. You can go to our family care center and use our Find Help tool, where you can actually find out who your local child and youth mental health service provider is, and that is publicly funded, so it's free of charge. You can also email us at support@pcmh.ca, and we will also connect you with peer support in your area or virtually, whatever is the best fit for you. And on our virtual family care center, you'll be able to find trusted resources like our AFCCA resource, Managing Aggression at Home. So you'll be able to learn more about what we've all talked about today. And that resource will also link you to some of the other resources we mentioned as well today. So thank you so much, Sarah, Melissa, and Jennifer, for coming and sharing your expertise with us today. It's very appreciated, and hopefully we've answered many of the questions that came through. So I appreciate you joining us, and thank you so much for your energy today.
Thanks, Vicki, for creating the space for the conversation. It's so important.
Thank you.